Hello, everybody. So we're going to start the session out talking about Subpart C in the 1926 series. 1926, as you found out from your reading, is the construction standard, and Subpart C is kind of where it all starts out. I guess to start with just a little bit of background, one of the things I'm going to try to do throughout this course is, in addition to have the readings and things like that you'll do, is actually try to do a PowerPoint with a video lecture like this. That way it gives you a little more information than just trying to read the text yourself. And now, just so you know, the quiz is going to be based not only on the PowerPoint, but it's also going to be on the reading. Kind of everything that we talk about is going to be fair game. But I found in another class that this worked pretty well, so I'm going to try to do it for this class as well. So if you look at sections for Subpart C, there's 8 different sections. Some of these we pay a little more attention to, and some of these we don't. I will say Subpart C is a pretty basic one. It's a lot of pulling in kind of references by incorporation by reference, and you're going to find with it it's a lot of, okay, well, we got to do this, but you're going to see this in Subpart F, or you're going to see this in Subpart D or R, or whatever it's going to be. They just briefly mention it here. So we got general provisions, safety and training, some first aid medical stuff, fire prevention, housekeeping, illumination, sanitation, personal protective equipment, etc. So typically, if a citation is issued, it's going to be because of one of these 4 things. The employee wasn't trained, so for whatever the case was, and this doesn't necessarily have to be a required where 1926 well says you have to train them. It's really vague in this case, and it's kind of vague for a reason that everybody has the responsibility to make sure their employees are trained to recognize hazards. That's one of the biggest differences that I see with 1910 versus 1926. Is 26 is much more of a you have to train your people to avoid the hazards versus you have to train them in this specific manner. So we got safety training, job site inspections by a competent person, no accident prevention program, or poor housekeeping. And poor housekeeping is really a big one in all industries, but construction seems to have the ability to have poor housekeeping build up that much faster. So if you look at the number of inspections and the number of citations, and I don't even know exactly when the period of time is, but you see training is way up there. Out of all these inspections or findings or citations, 785 are related to training, down to 98 for personal protective equipment. Now, that could be personal protective equipment are going to be cited somewhere else, but this is something to look out as well. A couple definitions to go through. These are pretty important to know. One is the competent person. And you are going to see that phrase over and over and over and over and over throughout this course. It's a very common one. Again, especially in construction. In general industry, we don't see it anywhere near as much, but for construction, we see it a lot. And the competent person has the authority to take corrective actions and able to recognize the hazards. So this is 2 things. These are very important. So they know what the hazards are, and they have the ability to take corrective action. So one of the examples that I'm going to use a lot is with plumbing. It's kind of my background, but they also have a very much of a hierarchy. There's apprentice, there's journeyman, and there's masters. You can train your journeyman or your apprentice plumber to recognize the hazards, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the ability to fix anything. So that competent person being able to do both of those roles is very important. That competent person has to be able to stop the work. They have to have the authority to do that. And as much as companies may say, oh yeah, any of our people can stop work at any time, very few of them actually give everybody that power. So that's why that competent person needs to be that upper level employee. Foreman, superintendent, project manager, etc. The next one is an authorized person. And that's just a person they're assigned by the job to be duty or be at the task. I mean, it could be anybody on site. It doesn't need to be any specific training. Construction work. This is an interesting one. Construction, alteration, repairing include painting and decorating. That comes right out of the standard. So even you think, go to a paper mill, you may have your maintenance people doing construction work. And that means that technically they would fall under here. Now, between 1910 and 1926, between those 2 standards, you can always use the more restrictive of the case, But sometimes there may not be a 1926 standard, so you have to follow the there may not be a 1910, so you have to follow a 1926. Employer qualified, somebody who has a degree, certificate, professional standing, or knows they've demonstrated the ability to solve or resolve problems. So qualified is a very high up not certification, but it's a status, and it's a pretty high status at that point. At the end of the day, this probably means you're the safety person or you're the person in charge. And when we get to fall protection, qualified means a lot. That means they actually have the ability to write up fall protection plans and do the engineering math, etc. So you look at contractor requirements. You look an employee performing contract work, which any kind of construction work, they cannot be allowed to work in conditions that are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to their safety or health. Every employer has that responsibility, and it lies solely with the employer. Employee made a mess of stuff, doesn't matter, still the employer's responsibility. So it's something to think about. It's always the employer's responsibility. The employer has the responsibility to maintain necessary programs. You're going to see a lot of programs throughout this course. In fact, you're going to be writing a lot of them, and at the time after time after time, it comes down as the employer is responsible to make sure they maintain it. Machineries have to be in compliance with regulations. We will be talking about this later. You have to make sure your tools are in compliance, or they have to be identified. You could tag it, you could lock it out, or physically remove from the place of operation. So you take it out, throw a tag on there until it's fixed, that's fine. Take it out, throw it in the tool crib, mark it there, that's fine. Cut the cord off, throw it away, that's fine. Doesn't really matter how you do it as long as it's something that's unsafe is not left on the job site. You have to make sure that only people who are trained and qualified are allowed to operate machinery. So you have this tractor here. You have to make sure that whoever's operating it actually has some sort of training. Gone are the days where everybody worked on the farm, so we'll just have them go and jump on and they'll be fine, they'll figure it out. Now you got to make sure they're trained. A lot of this is, again, through a separate school. If it's a union contractor, having a union operating engineer card would be appropriate, etc. With training, we have to make, this is kind of what I was getting to before, employees need to be instructed how to recognize and avoid unsafe conditions. One of the challenges with construction is that the situation is always changing. Things are getting put up, things are getting taken down, things are going to be moved. Things are always changing. So you can't just say, just pay attention to the rules. You have to teach them how to recognize and avoid these conditions. Especially if they're handling poisons, caustics, etc. We have to be trained on how that uses. And it could be plants and animals. Again, you look at where this work is being done. Are there bees present? Are there snakes present? Are there alligators? There's a lot of different stuff. And what do? A lot of this project or this jobs or work is being done outside of the urban area. Some of it can be very, very, very rural. Then also confined space. And we're not going to spend a lot of time because this has actually changed. We have a whole week that we'll be talking about confined space and construction. But employers are required to train their employees who enter what their hazards are. Now that's been the challenge with this is the construction requirement for confined space was 3 lines. And the general industry was an entire chapter. But that's changed. There's actually a confined space standard for construction that we will review later in the semester. First aid. Employers are responsible for making sure that they have provisions set up for first aid, medical attention, emergency facilities, etc. We're going to get into this more next week with Subpart D. Fire protection, same thing. Making sure that it's there during all phases of the construction, so it's not just at the very beginning or the very end, that it's throughout the entire thing. And we're going to talk about this more with Subpart F. And then housekeeping. To me, housekeeping is probably the biggest challenge in construction work. Everything we do, we're developing some sort of scrap and waste, etc. We want to make sure that that's taken care of. Combustible scrap needs to be removed at regular intervals to make sure we prevent fires. Make sure that shooting nails are taken care of. Anybody that stepped on a nail knows how uncomfortable that can be. And then making sure there's containers provided for collection of waste. And if it's flammable or hazardous waste, that it's covered up. And then there's standards, and we're going to talk about this again next week, that you have to have a certain amount of illumination. And we'll talk next week about exactly how much illumination is required for a specific time or a space. And then sanitation, again, it's going to be covered in Subpart D. Like I said, this one is very much okay, here's the deal, but here's the rule, but you're going to cover it more next week or in a couple weeks or at Subpart, whatever. So with sanitation, making sure you have water. You could have potable water for drinking, but you can also use water for other purposes, just like wetting out concrete or wetting down dust or whatever it is. It doesn't need to be potable. This is where you're going to find that. Eating and drinking areas, so people aren't eating and getting sick. And then also vermin control, making sure that you're not having rats running throughout or tall grass where critters could be living and stuff like that. PPE, the employer is responsible for making sure the person is wearing appropriate personal protective equipment. Includes fall protection. Appropriate is a really important rule there. I've been on job sites and I've seen people wearing bump caps where they should have worn hard hats, or they're wearing regular glasses instead of safety glasses, etc. I've seen those. I've been on those jobs, and you have to make sure that people are wearing the right things. If they're not wearing the right things, it's not better than nothing. It could actually be worse. And then egress. You have to make sure that every job has an unobstructed egress. If there is an issue, that they can get out. No locks prevent escapes. Now, of course, there's exceptions. Mental hospitals, penal institutions, etc. But they usually have a very specific policy or program to make sure that is the case. Exits marked by readily visible signs, and you make sure that these egress areas are continually maintained. So here's one that looks good. You got the ladder. You have the door here, comes down. You got the stairs that goes down. If there is a condition that prevents it, I guess maybe this guardrail is a little too close. Something like that. You want to make sure you correct those issues. Your emergency action plan has to be in writing. It has to cover the routes assigned and covers employees or actions that employees have to take. If there's something that they have to do in the event of emergency, it has to be spelled out for them. And again, we'll get into this later. It also talks about rescue and medical duties. So yeah, this was a very, very quick section. Some of these will go longer. I can't imagine one going slower because this is a lot of, okay, here's the basics and going on. We'll get into more details next week. So if you have any questions, please let me know and get a hold of me.